Hello, YouTube. I'm laughing because I have this another learning curve with another thing that I'm trying to do. I'm always trying these new things. So I just watched the entire David Icke and Brian Rose interview, and I it was just really great. Just categorically means so much to me. Partly because 30 years ago, he had an experience that was very similar to an experience that I had. Several camaraderie with him that has been very, very meaningful for me personally, and also uh, to um, to have so that I didn't feel so alone. Because there was there was nobody to talk to about this stuff. This is like this really weird esoteric stuff. I wanted to go live today because I really made a effort when I started doing YouTubes like a couple years ago. I really wanted to keep my YouTubes then, but a lot of them that I was actually seeing were um, a lot of them that I was actually seeing what were a little too long for me in the moment. So I would have to wait until later to actually actually be able to watch them. And so I kept my dedicated to that. And as close to 10 minutes as I could so that my audience could just get sort of this little nugget and then move on with their day. but, but I really, really wanted to talk about this interview. So there were a couple of pretty interesting takeaways that I had from it. The first thing had to do with the acquiescing to the masks. And there's so much information out there, and I live in the state of Arizona. So I live in the state of Arizona, and in the state of Arizona, they had started, in my town, they had started this mandatory mask, and you could not go into a grocery store without a mask. And if you didn't have a mask on, they would graciously hand you a mask. But in order to shop there, you had to be wearing a mask. And I was really, because before it hadn't been this mandatory thing. And now there's like these signs outside of the stores that you are not allowed to go in if you don't have a mask on. So that was a pretty big change for me. And also in other areas of my life where I was being required to wear a mask, and it being mandatory for me to remain in a situation, I had to wear a mask. And this idea of acquiescence, in America, in the USA, we did have I guess it was called like an incentive. I don't remember exactly what the term was, but we got like this $1,200 payout. And like for me, like while it was nice, it was the drop in the bucket. It was a drop in the bucket to be able to, like, I was able to, luckily at the time, I had actually two paying gigs at the time, and so I did okay. But so I ended up putting mine primarily into savings. But it was really a drop in the bucket for your average person. And in fact, I would say that I would not depend on the government, the federal government of the United States of America, to like be able to cover us, its citizens, in any way in these crises. I just don't see it. I think in other countries, they generally have a little bit more of an approach of possibly giving more aid, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying. And so it was really, really challenging to not acquiesce in these times. I had been doing a live stream from my farmer's market for weeks in a row. I have been an avid supporter of farmers markets. What I started to see was, like, years ago, there were these there was like I was working in Phoenix, and I was realizing there were all these people to feed. And so there were fast food restaurants everywhere, which are really not healthy. They're really not healthy food, really. Like, you don't even know if it's actually food. But I wasn't entirely sure, how do you feed all these people? And so I had this really weird vision of us actually turning and having our communities surrounding the local farms. And and then I had also, like, well, how are they going to actually support? And if we were supporting them, they could buy more land, and we could have, they could be growing all of our food and supporting our communities, and ranchers, and meat from ranching, and milk from ranching, like these farms where the animals are actually treated humanely. Chicken eggs from, like, chickens that are able to actually graze and enjoy their life, rather than being in these, like, horrible chicken factories. It's just really, so I have more of this issue with the manufacturing of food, rather than the eating of meat. That I don't really have as much an issue, although I am a vegetarian. So anyway, so I was going to my farmer's market weekly, and because what had happened was, they very graciously and quickly ended up going to a where you ordered your food, and then you would go and pick up your food on a Saturday, and you would stay in your car. So you would stay in your car, and they would bring you. You would say who you were, and they would bring you your food. And I was live streaming, and then the farmers market opened again. So the farmers market opens again, and they strongly suggested masks. Okay, and the farmers market is notoriously outdoors. It's notoriously an outdoor space. But they had this, like, mask, like, they heavily encouraged us to wear masks. And I remember the first week that I went and I didn't wear a mask, people were just staring at me. They were staring at me, and I felt really, really uncomfortable in this situation. But I just continued, and I have gone, and then I went, like, one more time maybe, and then I just quit going for a while, and I would quit my live streams. And I think that it was partly because I was really disappointed in the fact that our farms would actually, like, they would acquiesce, or like, they would fall into this place of fear, which anyway, so I went this last week, and it was so ironic. So I go and I did live stream on the way to the farmer's market this week. And as soon as I got out of the car, I ran into these people who did not have masks on, and I asked them how it went, and they said it was fine. And then they started talking about this, also this idea of this chloroform that David Icke had mentioned today. They not chloroform, I don't know what the name is. It's some kind of drug that would apparently has been known to, like, kill this virus, like, actually cure it. In fact, I read something today, I don't know if it's true or not. Somebody had put it on my Facebook. I had read, somebody had posted something about, and I don't know if it's true or not. See, we're getting all this information now, and we don't know what's true anymore. I mean, I'm just saying. But for me, the bigger tall tale of, like, truth is also how I experience it. So I can experience something, and that is a little bit more of an indicator for me personally if it's true or not. So when I do wear this mask, because I'm required to wear a mask at something in my life, and and I really have a hard time breathing. I'm just going to say I do. And then I hear all of this there's a lot of backlash if you say this. There's a lot of backlash toward you if you say this. Like David Icke had said that if you are not wearing a mask, you are killing people. And that's what they will say, and that is what they say. That is what they say. But anyway, I want to move on to another another topic that is really, really important to me personally. So I remember when my son was very young, when he was a toddler. So my oldest son was born in 95. Okay, so in 95, I remember I was really kind of, I'm not necessarily a conformist. I'm just going to put that out there. I kind of think about things and I'm like, so I go to get my son, like supposedly, like immunized. And I had talked to my mother about this, who had told me, that the immunization is better than the disease. This is like another one of those phrases that are said to us, like the immunization is better than the disease, right? So, and she had been brought up in a time of polio. Okay, so like people got polio and it was really bad. It was bad. Some children, I had known a gentleman who his legs, and he had been in, I guess, Shriner Institute or something like that, and they had done all this stuff to his legs. It was awful. And then you could just have this, simple immunization, and you would be immune to polio. But anyway, so my child is about, he was not even 2 yet. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think he was quite 2 yet. So I had taken him, and he had had all of his immunizations to this point, and I take him, and he has the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella, which is the immunization that. Let me just get through with this story. So he has it, and within a couple of months, and I know there was a separation between the vaccine and him, but he had his first seizure. So my son has this seizure. One night he has this mystery illness, and I'm holding him, and he feels literally like a heat lamp. And it's so weird because at the time I was reading a lot, because I've always been kind of into information and reading. And so I'm like reading a lot, and I see this, I'm like what to expect, like the first year or whatever. Those books were brand new when I was reading them. And so I go in, and it said something about febrile seizures or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, that's never going to happen to him. And then within minutes, he had a seizure, which was incredibly frightening to a first-time mother. So I end up, and that was not his last seizure. He had a seizure after that as well. And I continued to give him his immunizations until he was 4 years old and diagnosed autistic. And at the time, he wasn't diagnosed autistic. He was diagnosed with what they call pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And I always made jokes about how they don't really know what's going on with my child, not otherwise specified. In the DSM-5, it's like all over the DSM. At the time, it would have been the DSM-4. Now it's the DSM-5, and there is this, in all the categories, or like this area that's like not otherwise specified. It just makes me laugh. But anyway, so he was diagnosed with this pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And I'm smiling and laughing. It was really awful at the time, I'm just saying. And so I take him to this homeopath who tells me, do not ever immunize this child again, ever. Like his immune system is not dealing well with these immunizations. Do not ever immunize your child again. So that was when I quit with my daughter. My daughter was like 2 years old, and I didn't have her immunized after that. So she had all of her immunizations till she was 2. And then not after that. Then I had a third child. And I had my third child actually at home, just saying, because I didn't want anybody messing with him. Because I want to say something. I have worked in this field. I worked with children with developmental delays, birth to 3 years old, for like nearly 20 years. It had been my field of my career field. So I was a developmental special instructor for the state of Arizona. I worked for AZIP, and I've seen a lot of children. A lot of children have come. I've evaluated, I don't even know how to say how many children I've evaluated for services in the state of Arizona. And so I come across this question all the time, like what causes autism, or why do you think, and especially since I have a child who's diagnosed autistic, um, I often would get this question, and I really believe that it is a combination of things. I believe it's a combination of things. I think it can be a combination of the birth. I think it can be environmental. I think it can be genetic. And I think there may be an element of vaccinations exacerbating an already predisposition to this, whatever this is. Because in some ways, as time has gone on, I sort of see my child's autism as a superpower. I really do. Like he is, and like people stop me all over the town that we live in. They stop me all the time and ask me about him because he is like this little ray of sunshine. He's incredibly social. And so which is part of the reason why I think they should actually change the name, like autistic. It started out like people like into themselves or something, and they haven't changed it since then. But a lot of autistic children or people are not isolated. But anyway, so I get asked this question, and I'm sort of, I would have to say that I'm not necessarily anti-vaccination. I'm really not. I'm not necessarily anti-vaccination. I'm just, what bothers me is if you say anything, if you say one word about vaccinations and their potential harm to humankind, you are shut down. You are deemed an idiot, a moron, you're stupid, you're an anti-vaxxer, you are vilified, you are demonized for saying anything. Which leads me to the interview that I watched today, where, and I believe they've been setting us up for years. And he had mentioned, and I don't know what I hear, like who I hear things from anymore. I follow a certain amount of people, and so I don't always know who I'm hearing this information from. But I had heard also that, and I'm not entirely sure even what year it was, honestly, where they changed. I think it was actually Ronald Reagan. If I heard it correctly, it was Ronald Reagan who changed the regulations for the immunizations where they could not sue. They changed the ability to sue pharmaceutical companies who were making these immunizations. And so there's very little recourse if your child is affected by these immunizations. So I think this has been coming on, this idea has been coming on for years, and they have systematically vilified people. Oh, and also any studies get debunked. Like I had heard this study of this guy, and I'm not sure where he was. I don't remember all the details about it, but he had found this correlation between autism and the MMR, especially the measles, mumps, and rubella being put together. And then his study was shut down. It was debunked. They said this is not accurate. And I think it was more so a concern that parents would not bring their children back if they had to come back 3 times, which I'm going to say, I believe in very, very small amounts of cases would a parent not be willing, if they knew that their child had a better chance of not having autism or having their immune system changed by these immunizations, they would be willing to take their child back 3 times. I really believe that with everything. And so, and so it sort of went on, this thing about the immunizations. So not that long ago in the state of Arizona, there was an outbreak of measles. So there's this outbreak of measles, and somebody that had known my family for a while kind of, said, well, there's been this outbreak of measles, I know you may not have immunized Max, you may want to think about it. So I completely out of fear, and I'm just going to put this out there, I was completely in a fear-based mood. And I went and promptly took my child to get his MMR vaccine at the health department. So I take him over there, and I actually took my daughter too. So I take my son and my daughter. I took my daughter to actually get her boosters and other immunizations, whatever she might need. So I take my son to get this immunization, and he gets really sick. He gets really sick. I mean, really sick. He had this high fever for 4 days, and he also had like measles all over his body. He had these bumps all over. So I called the health department. And this is why I was there. Oh, yeah, that happens. Oh, yeah, that happens. And I'm just like, well, maybe he's got a better case of it. I'm like, no, he doesn't have a better case of it. And I will tell you, this particular nurse that had given him the vaccination was actually fairly nice to me. Was nice to us. She was like pretty decent. But so they really wanted me to come back for him to get his booster. And I was really reluctant to do that. I wanted to give his body a little bit of time to recover from this first batch. And I will tell you, I did have my child. He did have the booster. And when I came back, I was just like demonized. I mean, I was treated very badly the second time I went to have the vaccine, which is completely counterproductive. If you think about treating this person badly is very counterproductive. Shaming a mother for caring enough about her child to think, and not just go with the herd and just think about something before she does it, and to be treated badly about it really is not the preferred thing. But I guess it is when you're trying to herd cattle into a certain way of thinking. And so, and then I had forgotten to say that my son, my oldest son, also, so he had both of the chickenpox vaccines. My child had his chickenpox vaccine and his booster, and my oldest child got chickenpox, and he got a terrible case of it. And I call up the CDC. I say, I don't understand what's going on. My child had this vaccine. Why does he have chickenpox all over his body? I don't understand. How did this happen? And and they just said, oh, well, that happens. And this is like the narrative. And then, further, like, well, I don't understand. How did this happen? Oh, well, maybe they just didn't carry the batch right. Maybe they didn't keep it cool enough, or, maybe the vaccine was dead. They just come up with all of these stuff about that. But anyway, I think, and so I have heard from David Icke and also Dr. Buttar about the vaccine, that the vaccine is coming. The vaccine is coming. This vaccine is coming, and that this vaccine actually might have a bunch of stuff in it. It might have, and I had done this other YouTube about this Trojan horse, like this filling us with stuff and we don't even know, like putting it in something. And just really setting us up. And it's going to be even worse now than with all this. You're killing people not wearing a mask. Well, you're going to be killing people if you don't take this vaccine. I had actually seen it was actually a video of these girls. I guess they were reporters or something, and they were in China and they wanted to come back home, and they could not come back home unless they were tested for COVID. Okay, so they go to this COVID testing place, and they have to have this app put on their phone. So they have this app put on their phone, and they have to have the app in order to get out of China to come back to the US or wherever they lived. I don't know. I actually don't remember where they lived. They looked, they didn't look Chinese, is all I'm trying to say. But anyway, so they can't leave the country unless they have this app, some kind of stamp saying that they are not going to be giving this virus. And so it is entirely possible that this vaccine is coming, and it's already happening with the employment. The employment, like if you don't wear this mask, or if you get sick at work, if you get sick, you cannot come back without a COVID test. And what is happening with these COVID tests is that they are taking a really long time to come back. I'm just saying. So, like in that period of time when it's taking forever to come back, these people are getting paid. They don't have like sick leave. They don't have, so they're not getting paid when they're waiting for their COVID test to come back. And then their COVID test is coming back inconclusive, and then they just somehow just get written off the hours. They just lose their hours at that place. So it's going to be very, very interesting what he is talking about. What David Icke was talking about, I find that and through experience, like I'm experiencing it, I'm actually seeing it. I'm seeing it and I'm experiencing it. So I know that there is some level of truth to it. Some level of truth. So let me see. Like some of the things that he had said. I absolutely loved when he was making the joke, when he was talking about at the very beginning of the interview, when he was talking about like, what difference does it make if I go out 1 time a day versus 10 times a day? Like, this is another thing that I have been finding astounding in all of this. Like the rules that they are actually, like what they're saying that we can't do. Like we're not allowed, bars are not allowed to be open. Like, why? Why bars? If a restaurant can be open, so here's the irony. If they actually sell food, they can be open. They can be open if they sell food, but if it's just a full stop bar, they can't be open, which I think is a really weird thing. And then Mr. Icke was talking about how he had gotten around the mask wearing by staying in his car when he was on the ferry. And then they said he couldn't stay in the car when he was on the ferry anymore. But then the one people, if they came from Spain, those people had to stay on their car. They were not allowed to. This is insanity. It's just insanity. It's utter insanity. It's crazy. It's crazy making. It's just crazy. But anyway, I have found this all became this very, very pertinent to me about 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago, I went through this change. I went through this, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was very similar to Mr. Icke's, where I had these synchronicities that were really on top of each other. I write about it in my book. I do my little plug. Blonde-Haired Girl, Mystical Summer. If you would like to buy this book, I have them for sale, and you can, and I actually have my little square. I have my little square now, so you can actually purchase my book from me, anyway, and which I sort of want to get into this because we've been talking a lot about censorship. So we've been talking about censorship, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit. So, so there was somebody in my life that was very pertinent to me, and I'm not going to share his name. I'm not going to share his name, but he had actually written this book, and I pull his book out to read it, and it was a book about um that had come out like in the 90s, the late 90s, about how to basically make a living, how to raise your standard of living and make a living. And it was a book about doing what you really love to do and making a living doing that. And I pulled out the book one day, like in the last couple of years, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that that book was set up to fail. Either either the company that was going to publish the book had complete negligence and was a bad company to publish it, or the book just was set up to fail, partly because of the cover, not because of the contents, but because of the cover. Like the cover, I'm looking at this cover and I'm going, oh my goodness. But anyway, so and then I had talked early on in my YouTubes. I have a YouTube channel that I have been doing YouTubes for a couple of years. And and I had shared that my dad wrote a thesis. My dad has a master's degree, had a master's degree in philosophy, and he wrote this thesis. And when I open up this thesis, it has everything that my life has become in it. And the idea of space and time, because space and time is not what we think it is. Space and time categorically is not what we think it is. Like people have actually said this, and it's sort of this esoteric thing until you like really realize, oh my God, really there is only this ever present moment. There really is only this ever present moment. And that what we are perceiving, we perceive what we're seeing is sort of like this agreed upon in our own, like, that's what we're seeing, but there's so much more out there. There's so much more out there. My understanding of this partly came from had always wondered. So if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound or not if no one's there to hear it? And then I finally, like, actually categorically from this guy, um, this guy was like the determined. This is a really fabulous book, Biocentrism. I was encouraged to buy this book. I bought this book and I read it. And this book said categorically, it does not make a sound unless there is a receiver to hear it. And this also, I sort of started to like generalize it to that. Also, you have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of the sound, because what I started to notice was there was this fan that was going in my space all the time. Like in the summer, this fan was just going all the time, but I didn't always hear it. In fact, I only heard it when I was aware of it. And then I went to this thought, I wonder if that's the way it is with the things we see as well. And I'm just learning more and more about this. I guess this is physics. I didn't study physics in college, partly because I had my mind completely made up that I was not intelligent. I had completely convinced that I was not an intelligent person. And so I couldn't get physics. But anyway, what I'm trying to like one of the things, so this actual book, because my dad's thesis, went away in some library somewhere tucked in. Um, and and my niece, a couple of years ago, had this book actually published. I mean, not published, but she had it created for us, my family and I. And this book is just so interesting. I mean, even the cover just kind of blew my mind. At the time that she gave it to me, I didn't quite understand, but since then, I have had a better understanding of her making this book. I mean, in a sense, reading this book would have changed her life if she understood what it said. And I believe she had to have understood what it said to have actually, because like she had to put all of this information into the actual program, because she actually had this book made on a program called Blurb. Which is a program that I have tried to like. I just finished, like almost finished it, my second book, and I'm trying to do it in Blur again. I'm back at it again, partly because, so Amazon is really, really interesting to me. Now, my book has been sitting basically on a shelf, which is what these people told me was going to happen. They told me, if you publish your book on Amazon, it will just sit on a shelf. And they are exactly right. So my content, the content that I've been putting out for the last 2 years, in books, in podcasts, in YouTubes, about the nature of reality has basically not been picked up. It has not been picked up, which in some ways is a form of censorship. Like, it's in some ways, it's a form of censorship that my book did not get into any form of like an algorithm. I think that's the proper word, in order for it to actually be successful. And you would think that they would want it to be successful because they would make money, right? But I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. One of the things that I have noticed, and this is no disrespect to anyone, and this is no disrespect to anyone. However, what I have noticed is that the people who actually are are doing like exceedingly well, like the new people who are like content creators who are doing really well, their subject matter is like I don't know, it's, I don't know, beauty tips. It's like I've heard of like people like showing nude pictures of themselves. Like, I don't know, a lot of it is just, I guess I would say, like, in some ways, like entertainment, although some of the entertainment I don't quite understand. Like, and this is kind of gross, but it's like people would rather watch somebody's boil being popped than like the YouTubes about the nature of reality. And like, I don't understand it, except what's coming to mind for me right in the moment is that it is challenging, because I didn't understand it, and I studied it for many years, and I did not understand it until I experienced it. And then once I experienced it, it was just mind blowing, and it just changed. I just changed. So, but getting back to David Icke, so I had this experience, and then I just lived in this like, and it's gotten a lot better, although I have these synchronicities every day. And sometimes I've wondered, like, is it like my phone? Like, is my phone just, are they tracking me on my phone and they're just putting out this stuff from my phone, but it's not always on my phone. Like I've talked many times about the fact that I see these triple numbers. I see these triple numbers like 555, 111, 444, 777, and I see them on license plates. And sometimes it's just like yesterday when I was at the farmer's market, I had seen, like, within a matter of like a minute, I had seen three license plates that had these triple digits. And so it is like this really, really different way of living, which brings me to, and David Icke actually alludes to it at times. And I think that perhaps his idea of not acquiescing, that we have the power to actually change this and to have the world the way that we want it to be. We have the power to create a different way, a different reality that is not um, what is being presented to us. Because, like, if you think about, there's like a number of people who have really taken this as an opportunity to like open businesses. Like, there's been a lot of really amazing things that have come out of this. Like, um, there is. I was like thinking about children being with their parents. Although, because I think that it is really good for parents and children to have more time together. But I also would be in agreement with David Icke's idea that children not even knowing what to do, like this being afraid of each other and not being able to play together, and having to go to school wearing a mask, or not being able to go to school because it's a dangerous world out there. I mean, I cannot even imagine being a child right now and walking around, and they're at this very low, they're not very tall. And so they're looking up at all these people, and everybody's wearing these masks, and they were like these giants before, and now they're these giants expressionless, um, with these masks, and all the masks are actually different. And how frightening that would be to children. And then also them suggesting, like it being suggested that this is the new normal. So this is the new normal. This is the way it's going to be. And me, my hope that it won't become the new normal. That it won't become the new normal. Because I don't think there's anything normal about this. I don't see anything normal about this. Like people being in the hospital and you can't go visit them. My mom was in the hospital and I couldn't go visit her. Um, People dying and you can't even have a funeral, or passing away and you can't have a funeral. You can't be with your loved ones when they're passing out of their body because of COVID. Um, I just don't want this to be the world that we live in. I think there is so much value in actual proximity, and like this live streaming. Like, I was set up to go to this conference in June. I was so excited. I was so excited about this conference. So excited. And so I had paid for everything. I like paid for the flight, and I'd gotten this Airbnb, and I'd figured out how to get an Uber to go from the airport to the Airbnb, and I had paid for the conference and everything. I was so excited, and I was packing my bags actually. And then the people who were putting on the conference, they went to live streaming because of the COVID. And I was so sad because I mean, well, I do believe that there is value in zooming. There is value in remote interaction. I don't think it's the same as actually being in proximity of someone. And I'm just going to say that. I don't think it's the same. Like even when we were watching, or when I was watching David Icke and Brian Rose, they were in the same room. And if they had streamed him, from his home, and then Mr. Rose was, at London Real Studio, it would have been a completely different um a completely different scenario. So I'm hoping this won't be the new normal. And this idea of acquiescing, and I think that perhaps we acquiesce until we don't have to anymore. In the sense that, like right now, I have been actively, ever since this quarantine had happened, trying to have an independent source of income where I'm not dependent on a paycheck from an establishment in order to, like, basically financial freedom in a way. So I've been going in all these different avenues with that, and energetically putting myself in this position. And like yesterday, yesterday I was watching this like really cool thing by Anthony Hopkins. Is that his name? Anthony Hopkins, the actor. Is it Anthony? Anthony Hopkins? I think it is. I could be wrong. But anyway, so he had done this video, and it was just amazing. And it was basically about this, like that you have the belief, you assume that you already have this stream of income. You assume that it is already given, and stand in gratitude for that it is already given, and that we ask and it is given every time. We ask and it is given every time. And then when we stand in the belief and the knowledge that it is there, but sometimes we just can't see it yet. Sometimes we just can't see it yet. Honestly, it's just like the awareness, like of the fan. It's sort of in this, it's not quite filled in yet. It's not quite baked yet. It's like an idea that sometimes needs a little more tweaking, like the stars aligning. I always talk about that, like the stars aligning, and bam, just kind of happens. And so I'm hoping, because it was when this thing went down a couple of years ago, I was getting a lot of information, and I'm going to say, I believe that we all have what is called an entourage. What I believe my dad, who passed away, told me that I had an entourage. And my understanding was that it not only was all kinds of kind of creatures, but also animals. It kind of makes me laugh. Like I get this like impression that I have a German Shepherd in my entourage, who kind of is with me all the time. This entourage. But anyway, but I was like the understanding that I had, that was that this was the time in this history of this idea of heaven on earth, this idea of us living the lives that we want to live, with the people that we want to live, where we want to live, having a heavenly life, so that we don't feel like we have to die to be happy. Because like many of us, myself included, for many years, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be, where I'm pretty happy a lot of the time. I feel pretty good a good percentage of the time. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. But anyway, and so that we don't have to die, or we don't, but I'm just going to say that to actually be happy. And so I've been putting out content for the last couple years. I create content. That's what I do. that I hope inspires people to tap into the source of all that is in order to be happy, because that's where it's at. That's where it's at, is when we come into alignment. It's like having our, I always say sort of like this, having our satellite dish, kind of set to that which created everything. And then that means that anything is possible. And so us turning our attention to that which is wanted, turning our attention to that love will prevail. And I do believe that that we do need to not acquiesce. I really believe that. I also have this understanding that my love for my children and wanting them to eat is very important right now too, as well. So it's sort of like acquiesce until we don't have to acquiesce anymore, which is what I believe will be happening for us, not just me. But anyway, I appreciate you listening. I'm not really sure how this works. This is my first live stream, so I'm going to see how I'm hoping that I would be able to just post this also on my YouTube station. I appreciate you. I love my followers. I love my followers very much. I appreciate you. And until next time.